Hello everyone. Welcome to the Lightning Ball channel. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so and activate the notification bell. Your support fuels my continued efforts. In our previous episode, Dino used his ultimate skills, Lord of Heaven and Lord of Sloth, to successfully sever the Lord of Justice's control circuit and fused his ultimate skills into a new one, Lord of Fallen. At the same time, Shuna displayed abilities beyond comprehension, successfully analyzing and mimicking Dino's operations to modify the skills of Pico, Gracia, and Mai Furuki, freeing them from Feldway's control while granting them even more powerful abilities. Of course, Shuna received mysterious aid at this critical moment. Thus, Dino had now returned as Rimuru-sama's ally. However, just as everyone was celebrating the return of Dino and the others, an unexpected enemy, the insect lord Zelanus, with an existence point of 114 million, invaded the labyrinth and ambushed and defeated Zegion. Witnessing this, everyone fell into despair. But Diablo stepped forward, stating that he would handle this extremely powerful opponent. In this episode, Diablo will finally showcase his immense strength for the first time. Let's take a look at this thrilling showdown. So, let's get started. When Diablo proposed to face Zelanus alone, Benimaru and Rimuru immediately rejected the idea. Benimaru stated that Diablo couldn't possibly defeat Zelanus, while Rimuru felt that Diablo was being too overconfident. If Beretta had been in the command center, he would have told them that stopping the Black King was impossible, so he would have agreed with Diablo's plan. However, since Beretta wasn't there, most of the others present were against this idea. Diablo, a bit annoyed, remarked that one couldn't know the outcome without trying. In the midst of this tense atmosphere, Trainee stepped in to defuse the situation. According to her, the current state of everyone in the room, including Benimaru, wasn't perfect, and Diablo was the only one who could face Zelanus. No one could refute her, and so, the group's opinion was unified. Shifting back to Dino's perspective, the labyrinth trembled again, and it was clear that the source of the disturbance was heading toward Dino's floor. Amid the growing unease, cracks appeared in the ceiling of the floor, caused by an unimaginable force tearing through the labyrinth's layers as it rushed downward. Rimuru's labyrinth exists on different dimensional levels, making it easy to escape but extremely difficult to invade. In fact, with just a few separated layers, even skills like magical perception become harder to use. Without Rimuru authorization, actions like transferring specific people or objects are impossible. However, the unknown being radiating this powerful and unconcealed aura was moving directly toward the floor where Dino and the others were. To Dino, it seemed as if pure brute force was ripping through dimensions. Only a handful of individuals in this world could achieve such a feat. Dino frantically tried to figure out who it could be. De Gruel was likely still on the battlefield, so it had to be either Feldway or Zelanus. Dino shouted, asking Rimuru what exactly was happening. Rimuru responded through the broadcast, saying that she was currently super busy and things were going terribly, promising to explain to Dino later, before cutting off communication. Dino, having an inkling of the situation, was about to ask who the intruder was, but there was no longer any need. The intruder had already broken through the upper layer and landed directly in front of Dino. Zelanus exuded an overwhelming aura of dominance, displaying the presence of an ultimate powerhouse. More shockingly, he was holding Zegion, whom Dino had thought unbeatable, in his left hand. Dino couldn't believe his eyes and shouted in disbelief. But the fact was undeniable. The strongest warrior in the labyrinth, Zegion, had lost consciousness and was being dragged by Zelanus like a rag doll. Shuna, Beretta, and Geld remained composed, while Apito cried out Zegion's name and tried to rush over to save him, only to be stopped by Geld. Kamara and the others were wide-eyed, speechless in disbelief. They knew what this scene represented and simply couldn't accept it. Shuna, maintaining her calm, ordered everyone not to lose focus and began directing the situation. Beretta quickly confirmed an escape route, and Dino and the others prepared to retreat to the command center. If they were to save Zegion, they needed a well-thought-out plan. However, just as everyone began to move, Zelanus acted with such speed that he was almost invisible to the naked eye. His target was clear, Apito, who was being protected by Geld. Geld immediately stepped forward to defend her, but it was futile. Despite his unmatched defense, Geld was taken down by a single, half-hearted blow from Zelanus, losing consciousness. Considering that even Zegion had been defeated, it wasn't surprising that Geld was struck down so quickly. Rimuru-sama's voice echoed, announcing that she had changed the revival point. As if to prove her words, the revival bracelets on everyone's wrists began to glow. Amidst the extreme chaos, Rimuru had already enacted a practical contingency plan. Dino couldn't help but marvel at how Rimuru, who had been his enemy just moments before, now fully trusted him. But Dino had no intention of fleeing. If he ran now, it would be difficult to earn anyone's trust in the future. He felt that returning to his comrades without contributing would be taking advantage of them. Dino glanced at Pico and Gracia, who immediately understood and signaled that they were prepared for the upcoming battle. Mai Furuki also raised her longbow, expressing her intent to stand with Dino and the others against Zelanus. However, no matter how much they tried to put up a brave front, Zelanus remained unfazed. The gap in strength between them was far too large. In Zelanus' eyes, they were nothing more than insignificant ants. Zelanus sneered at Dino and his group's futile behavior, mockingly suggesting that if they handed over Apito willingly, he might consider sparing them. Dino, being clever, quickly realized that Zelanus was after his own kin. The reason Zegion hadn't been killed yet might not be because he couldn't be, but because Zelanus also wanted to take him out of the labyrinth. Whatever Zelanus intended to do to Zegion and Apito outside the labyrinth, the current situation was highly unfavorable for Dino and his companions. Dino's assessment was correct. Zelanus, wielding the authority of the Lord of Life and the power of life restoration, could claim the powers of Zegion and Apito by killing them. However, since they could infinitely revive within the labyrinth, Zelanus had to take them out first. Whoever stood in his way would be mercilessly eliminated, and Zelanus indeed had the power to dismiss all current threats in the labyrinth. But then, with a familiar laugh, someone unafraid of Zelanus appeared. It was none other than Primordial Black, Diablo, the Black King. Diablo, smiling, declared that he wouldn't let Zelanus succeed. Seeing such powerful reinforcements arrive, Dino couldn't contain his excitement, and called out Mr. Diablo joyfully. Diablo, with a cold glance, responded disdainfully, saying Dino's greeting was a bit nauseating and that he should hurry and get everyone to safety. With that, Diablo positioned himself in front of Zelanus, and the battle between the Black King and the Insect Lord began. Zelanus casually tossed Zegion aside, fixing his gaze intently on the black-haired man before him. We know that, like Felway, Zelanus is an extremely cautious individual. He had already scanned the labyrinth for any potential dangerous figures and, at that time, detected none. However, after encountering Diablo up close, Zelanus suddenly felt a sense of unease, a warning sign of danger, reminiscent of when he fought Melim. Although Diablo's presence seemed weaker compared to Zelanus or Melim, he was not an opponent to be underestimated. Diablo remained eerily calm, stating that he would be the one to test the strength of the Insect Lord. Zelanus, unfazed, retorted that Primordial Black was quite the arrogant fool. With those words, Zelanus vanished into the darkness, using an air barrier to slip through space and appear behind Diablo. He swiftly spun and aimed a kick at Diablo's unguarded head. Yet Diablo, as if anticipating the move, leaned forward while simultaneously countering with a backward kick, effortlessly blocking Zelanus' attack. Zelanus' body was significantly larger than Diablo's, and this attack was even stronger than the one that had previously shattered Primordial Yellow Carrera's arms. In theory, even if Diablo managed to block it, his bones should have been crushed under the force. However, in reality, Diablo effortlessly neutralized the blow. His expression remained unchanged as both fighters instinctively withdrew to create some distance. Diablo, calm as ever, remarked that Zelanus' entire body seemed to be composed of ultimate steel hierocane, noting that breaking through would be challenging. Diablo then converted his magical energy, revealing his own mythical level claws. Zelanus found Diablo's words laughable, calling them the delusions of a madman. As if to intimidate, Zelanus spread his enormous wings wide and displayed 3 pairs of arms, each adopting a different stance. The lower arms were ready to cast magic, the middle arms were set in a defensive position, and the upper arms vibrated to form blade-like edges. Zelanus had no weak points, able to counter attacks from any distance and respond with close, mid, and long-range assaults. As a side note, the method used to calculate existence points includes values unrelated to combat, so these points don't directly equate to fighting power. But in Zelanus' case, almost all his stats were combat-related, making him the ultimate battle life form. Yet Diablo was unfazed. He was relishing this seemingly unwinnable fight. Diablo had his own battle philosophy. Rather than relying on vast reserves of magicule, he valued explosive bursts of magic power. Diablo had trained extensively in this aspect. As for insufficient magicule, he could just draw from the atmosphere, so he wasn't misled by mere numbers, instead focusing on the pure essence of power. To Diablo, humans were mere entertainment, and most of them were boring. But there were exceptions, those with beautiful souls, like Miss Shizu, who, despite knowing she couldn't defeat Diablo, bravely challenged powerful enemies. Her relentless fight against destiny deeply impressed Diablo. What mattered to him wasn't just winning, but having the ability to always triumph, no matter the odds. This experience came in handy during his fight with Zelanus. Battles between top-tier opponents either end in an instant or drag into a drawn-out struggle. Diablo was fully aware that, against someone who had effortlessly defeated Zegion, he had few effective moves. His only option was to bide his time, wait for Zelanus to reveal a weakness, and then strike with his most powerful technique, hitting the vital point in one decisive blow. We all know that Diablo has a somewhat eccentric and twisted personality, one that can give even primordial Red Gi and Feldway headaches. As a result, Diablo was thoroughly enjoying his battle with Zelanus. Zelanus, however, was equally baffled, wondering if Diablo truly didn't understand the vast difference in their power. But Diablo's specialty was unsettling his opponent's mindset, a skill so effective that even Feldway feared it. Diablo mockingly told Zelanus that if their power gap was so immense, he was eagerly awaiting the moment when Zelanus would swiftly and decisively defeat him. He then taunted Zelanus further, ridiculing Zelanus for being so powerful yet unable to defeat someone weak like himself, implying that Zelanus was nothing but a boastful weakling. When it came to verbal battles, Diablo was unmatched. Still, Zelanus' cautious nature prevented him from becoming angry at Diablo's taunts. Diablo praised Zelanus for his strength, noting that compared to Feldway, Zelanus was much better at resisting his verbal jabs. A cautious and powerful opponent was indeed troublesome. Up to this point, Zelanus hadn't used any big moves against Diablo, instead sticking to close-range combat. Even with just hand-to-hand attacks, Zelanus was strong enough to cause spatial compression explosions around them. With sheer physical power alone, he was keeping Diablo in check. But Diablo wasn't losing either. Although every single strike from Zelanus had the potential to knock him out, Diablo's incredible calculative abilities allowed him to perfectly redirect Zelanus' strength. By leading Zelanus' attacks away, Diablo skillfully neutralized the force of the blows. He created decoys repeatedly to divert Zelanus' attention and countered with his mythical claws. Although Zelanus blocked each strike perfectly, Diablo wasn't frustrated and immediately prepared for his next move. Zelanus, on the other hand, was growing increasingly irritated. While he mocked Diablo for overestimating himself, he couldn't help but feel an inexplicable annoyance. His opponent was significantly weaker, yet he couldn't secure victory, which frustrated him more than he anticipated. Unlike his battle with Melim, Zelanus was certain he wouldn't lose this time, but Diablo was proving to be incredibly difficult to handle. In fact, this was the first time in Zelanus' life that he'd encountered such an annoying opponent. Diablo continued his verbal jabs, laughing in his trademark way and teasing Zelanus, saying Zelanus must be out of shape to be getting tired so quickly. Diablo calmly used this taunting tactic, and Zelanus' anger continued to build. However, Zelanus knew that, in the long run, he couldn't lose. As long as the battle dragged on, it was inevitable that Diablo would be the one to fall. The scene shifts back to Dino and his group. Witnessing the intense battle before them, Dino, Pico, Gracia, and Mai Furuki were all stunned, unable to react. Although Diablo had given them orders to flee, they had assumed those orders were meant for the labyrinth's guardians. As a result, they ignored the command, choosing to watch the fight, and thus missed their chance to escape. Dino was now filled with regret, hitting his chest in frustration. Worse yet, while they couldn't flee anymore, the idea of intervening in the fight was even more impossible. Mai Furuki couldn't even follow their opponent's movements, and apart from Dino, everyone else there would likely be cut in half by a single blow. Pico and Gracia, clearly more composed, focused on healing Zegion. Dino, Mai Furuki, and Epito took responsibility for guarding them. As for Epito, she chose to stay behind out of concern for Zegion. Although Epito's speed allowed her to see the movements of Diablo and Zelanus, she knew that intervening would lead to her instant destruction. This highlighted just how extraordinary Diablo was, but everyone had grown so accustomed to Rimuru's overwhelming strength that they overlooked how exceptional Diablo truly was. Meanwhile, Shuna, Beretta, Kamara, and Geld had already evacuated to the command center. They knew they couldn't contribute to such a fight, and repeatedly dying would only burden Ramirez. Ramirez welcomed them back, and Shuna nodded before beginning to heal Geld. Everyone kept their eyes glued to the screen, fully aware that participating in this battle was beyond their capabilities. Shuna remarked that if it weren't for Diablo, they would all have perished long ago. Beretta, Gabiru, Ranga, and Cherries were all shocked by Diablo's incredible strength. It was a level beyond their imagination. Shuna then remembered something and mentioned to Benimaru that they had left Epito on the battlefield. Benimaru reassured her that it was the right decision. Although difficult, he explained that since Zelanus could sense the location of both Zegion and Epito, bringing Epito back would only endanger everyone else. Unlike Rimuru, who could effortlessly create miracles and save everyone, Benimaru and Ramirez couldn't rescue every individual. Now they could only place their hopes on Diablo. Returning to Diablo's perspective, beneath his calm exterior, he too was inwardly impressed by Zelanus. Zelanus was handling Diablo's attacks and provocations with the most appropriate responses, leaving no openings whatsoever. This meant that Diablo had no miracle or opportunity to reverse the battle. Although Diablo had hoped to unnerve his opponent through taunting, the tactic was proving ineffective. Even Diablo himself would feel irritated when weaker beings provoked him, but Insect Lord Zelanus hadn't deviated from the path to victory he had set from the start. Diablo's mind raced as he considered every possible strategy. Provoking his opponent further would be a suicidal move. Benimaru and the other executives were prepared to fight, and Zegion was expected to recover soon. Diablo knew their current battle tactics were being closely observed and analyzed by his comrades. In a full-scale war, where everyone engaged Zelanus, there might be a slim chance of victory, but that could lead to severe damage to the labyrinth. Moving the battlefield to the surface would result in catastrophic casualties. Either scenario would deeply sadden Rimuru-sama upon his return, and Diablo couldn't allow such outcomes. As Diablo calculated, it became clear that Zelanus' goal was Zegion and Epito. If Diablo were to lose, their fate would be sealed, and Zelanus would only grow stronger. Protecting these two comrades was now an absolute necessity. However, since Zelanus could sense their locations, anyone trying to shield them would be targeted and eliminated, leading to unnecessary sacrifices. After considering his options, Diablo concluded that his only choice was still to keep stalling while gathering more information, searching for a weakness in Zelanus that could be exploited. Then, at the right moment, he could coordinate an all-out attack using the combined strength of everyone in the labyrinth. Of course, this plan required Diablo to perfectly fend off every one of Zelanus' attacks. Though seemingly impossible, Diablo felt no concern about this. Diablo mentally rehearsed the strategy, fully confident that it would work. However, in this world, nothing is ever guaranteed. At that moment, Zelanus taunted him, calling Diablo nothing more than a petty insect who used cheap tricks, perfectly suited to serve his master, a lowly slime. Normally, Diablo wouldn't be affected by insults or provocations on himself, but this time was different. It was about his beloved master, Rimuru-sama. In Diablo's mind, Zelanus had crossed a forbidden line. The light in Diablo's eyes vanished, replaced by a bottomless darkness that seemed to swallow Zelanus whole. Even in the command center, where Zelanus' words echoed, Rimuru let out a startled gasp. Everyone there felt the same overwhelming fury, and the room was thick with murderous intent. Rimuru smashed a table to pieces with a single punch. Rimuru quickly reminded him how expensive that table was. Yet they wouldn't have the chance to intervene because someone at the battlefield was even more enraged than they were. A blazing fury, as if it consumed every cell of his body, pulled Zegion back from the brink of death. The strongest warrior of the labyrinth had returned. Was this a coincidence or fate? Zelanus' careless remark shifted the course of destiny. Upon awakening, Zegion thanked Dino for his care, stating that he owed Dino a favor, and then calmly stood up. Pico and Gracia, who had been healing him, quickly tried to stop Zegion from acting impulsively, pointing out that he hadn't fully recovered yet. However, Zegion paid them no mind, his gaze fixed on the insect lord, Zelanus. He was determined to fulfill his duty to protect the labyrinth. Dino attempted to reason with Zegion, pointing out that even Diablo was struggling in this fight, and it would be a tough battle for him too. But Zegion merely smiled softly, asking Dino to take care of Apito. Without another word, Zegion gently pushed Dino aside and walked toward Zelanus. In a rush, Dino anxiously asked if Zegion truly believed he could triumph. Zegion, with his usual calm demeanor, showed no hesitation and replied with unwavering confidence that he would win. Seeing this resolute assurance, a smile slowly spread across Dino's face. Alright, that's all for this video. If I remember correctly, this is the first time Diablo has fought seriously in the entire TenSura series, completely validating Rimuru's previous comment that as long as Rimuru was around, Diablo would always seem to slack off. Zelanus' strength is unquestionable, as shown by Diablo's struggles, and it made Diablo realize that Zelanus had reached the realm of the gods. In our next episode, we will cover the father-son showdown between Zegion and Zelanus, marking the shift in the hierarchy of the insect race. Zegion's confidence surely stems from a mysterious force backing him, you know who. The next episode will be equally thrilling. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support is greatly appreciated. See you in the next one.